Hello guys, this is part 96 of ASP.NET video series. In this session we will discuss about implementing change password page in ASP.NET. When a user clicks on password reset link, the user lands on changepassword.net dot changepassword.axpx page. In fact, in part 95, in fact, in part 95 of this video series, we discussed about generating and emailing the password reset link. The password reset link looks like something as shown below. Here you can see this is the link. In fact, I can show you the email that we have generated in in part 95 of this video series. So go to the email ID. So the link looks like this, the password reset link. Here you can see that the user clicks on this link. Obviously you might expect the user is going to land on this page, the change password.axpx, change password.axpx. And if you look at the URL, it has got a query string, as you can see here, with the name UID, query string with name UID. Okay, and its value is 32 digit number, which is a globally unique identifier. Okay, its value is 32 digit number, which is a globally unique identifier. So from this URL, we will retrieve this GUID value, means this GUID value, globally unique identifier, and then we look it up in the database, and then we will look it up in the database. So in the database we have this TBL reset password request. Here we have TBL password request table, which is going to keep track of all the requests that were generated by user by assigning a globally unique identifier, by assigning a globally unique identifier, and to that identifier there is a user ID. There is a user ID, as you can see here. Okay, so we look up that globally unique identifier, find out who is the user, and then use that user ID, look up in TBL user table, means here. Okay, means we will use this user ID and look up in TBL users and change the password here, Okay, So once we change the password or update the password, we are going to delete this row. We are going to delete this row, this one. From TBL reset password request, we will delete this row after changing or updating the password. We will delete this row from the TBL reset password request table. Okay, because we want to make this link, because we want to make this link. Which link? This link, because we want to make this link invalid. Okay, we want to make this link invalid after the user changes her password. We don't want to keep this link valid. Okay, we don't want to keep this link valid and active forever. Okay, we want to change them after they change their password. In fact, in reality, organization will enforce some kind of expiration policy. Now, some organization might say after the user has generated the link, he need to change his password within 5 working days or 10 working days. After that, the link is automatically expired. Okay, so there are some kind of expiration policy just to, for security reasons. Okay, now let's go ahead and see how to implement this change password page. So obviously the first thing is to do is to write a stored procedure which will check if that link which will check if that link is a valid link. How do we know if that link is a valid link? We take that, we pass that globally unique, this globally unique identifier to the stored procedure. Okay, we pass that globally unique identifier to the stored procedure. The stored procedure will check if there is a row with that value. With that value, it means the stored procedure will check if there is a row, with that value, this value. Okay, if there is a row, then some user have granted a password reset request. Okay, if there is a row, then some users have generated a password reset request. If not, then we know that somebody is trying to use some random globally unique identifier to fool the system. Okay, so the simple way to check if the link is valid or not, check the TBL reset password request table. Check the TBL check the table. Check the TBL reset password request table. If the row with that ID, means if this row with that ID means in the link, as you can see that this one is in this ID, then we know it is a valid request. Otherwise, it is an invalid or an expired link. Okay, expired link. If there is not the same value as shown here in the globally unique identifier, and here is a different value, then it is invalid. If the if the value is same as in the link as in the row, then it is a valid link. Okay, and that is what we are exactly doing within the stored procedure here. So I have a stored procedure. So we'll go to the SQL Server Management Studio. Where is the stored procedure? Here it is. SP is password reset link valid. Okay, this is the stored procedure. And to this stored procedure, we are passing in just a globally unique identity, globally unique identifier, globally unique identifier. This one's at GUID. Okay, this is the only one parameter. This is the only one parameter of type unique identifier. So this stored procedure is expecting. So this stored procedure is expecting, a globally unique identifier value. Okay, so we pass this. So we pass this value, means which value? This one, this unique, globally unique identifier. We pass this value to that stored procedure. Okay, where is the stored procedure? To that stored procedure here. And if you look at this stored procedure, what is it doing? It's saying select user ID from TBL reset password requests, TBL password request table. So if you look at this table, means if I run, if I execute this table, if you look at this table, TBL reset password request table. So if you look at that table, so there is an user ID column. Here you can see user ID column. So we are trying to select the user ID from TBL reset password request, where ID is equal to whatever we pass in as an input parameter. Need to minimize it, drag and drop a little bit. Okay. Okay. Where ID is equal to whatever we pass in as an input parameter, to the stored procedure. Okay, so if there is a user ID, for that globally unique identifier, okay, for that globally unique identifier, then there will be something this exist function will return false if the user ID is null, or the user ID does not exit for the given input globally unique identifier. Okay, for this globally unique identifier. Okay, once again I am telling you, there will be something, this exist function will return false if the user ID is null or the user ID does not exist for the given input globally unique identifier. If it exists, if it exists, we know that it is a valid password reset link. So we are saying select one as is valid password reset link. Otherwise zero. Otherwise zero. You can even quickly test that. Look at that. Pass this, if I pass this in here, means I copy this unique identifier and paste it here within the commas, and if I execute it, so I pass this in place of GUID. If I replace that as an ID, as you might expect, it is going to return some user ID. Some user ID. Look at that. One. On the other hand, if I change this to some random stuff, means I change it to some random stuff, means I type it here D in place of C. And if we execute that, look at that, it does not return anything. Means if now I select this and execute it, so look at that, it does not return anything. So if exist will be false, if that is false, then it comes here, then it comes here at here. Okay, if exit will be false, if that is false, then it comes here. Okay, this exist function, and it says select 0 as is valid password reset link. Means if I execute this, okay, 0 is false. Okay, which is false. So now we will use the stored procedure in our application to check if the reset link is valid or not. So that is the first thing we have to do. Okay, we we make you understand. We made you understand that exit will be false. If that is false, then it comes here. Means here we execute this select 0, and 0 is the value of indicating false. Okay, so now we will use the stored procedure in our application to check if the reset link is valid or not. So that is the first thing we have to do. And the next thing is we want to actually change the password after we tested it. So the first thing we want to call the, means first you need to go to the Visual Studio, go to the design part. So the first thing, so we want to call the stored procedure within our application. So how do we do that? In order to call the stored procedure, we need to write some edu.NET code and we have seen how to do that in previous session as well. So I am going to quickly copy and paste some edu.net code. But before that, if you look at the change password page itself, it is pretty straightforward. All it has is the static text, this one, and new password, confirm new password, and then two text boxes, okay, where the user can enter the password and confirm new password, and then click the save button. And here we again have some required validator and compare validate to make sure new password and confirm new password match up, and then validation summary, control, and a label control. Here it is, the label control to display status message. Okay, so what is the first thing that we want to do? When the page loads up, we want to call the stored procedure. We want loads up When the page loads up, we want to call the stored procedure, because when the user lands on this page, at that point of time, we want to tell the user is that password recent link valid or invalid. So for example, if I build this at this point, and then means if I control build this, build this uh, control shift B, build this at this point, and then if I click on this link, means go to the email ID. If I click on this link, when the user first lands on our application using that link, look at that. As soon as he comes onto this page with this globally, with this globally unique identifier, if that is existing within this table, if that is existing within this table, okay, within this table, that is existing within this table, then I want to say okay, it is valid link, otherwise it is invalid or expired link. Okay, let's see how to do that. So we need to call that stored procedure. Okay, we need to call that stored procedure. So obviously, if you want to call stored procedure, you need to use some of the edu.net namespace system.data and system.data.sql client and system.data system.configuration. Okay, so let's copy and paste simple edu.net. I have a function here which is a reusable function. Means first of all we need to go to the notepad. Okay, and we need to copy and paste this code stuff first. Copy it and paste it here. So, which is a reusable function. This execute sp is a reusable function. So here we see some compilation error. So as we have already told that we need to import some namespaces. So system dot data system dot SQL client and system dot configuration. Okay. So this is a reusable function. So if you look at this function, it is pretty generic function. This function name execute sp. Function name is execute sp, as you can see here, and this function is going to return it true or false. And this function is going to return it true or false. So if you look at the stored procedure that we have here, it either return 1, means if you go to the stored procedure, it either return 1 or 0. 1 if it is valid, 0 if it is invalid. 1 can also be typecasted into true and 0 to false. So basically this function, which function? So basically this function execute sp is going to return true or false. So what is this function is going to do? It is going to take in a stored procedure, is going to take in a stored procedure name, sp name, stored procedure name, and then list of SQL parameter and list of SQL parameters. So if you look at the stored procedure, it is procedure, it is expecting only one input parameter. It is only expecting one input parameter. So I'm going to pass that. So I'm going to pass that into this function. So I'm going to pass that pass this into this function. Okay, so I will pass the SQL parameter. So I will pass SQL parameter collection SQL SQL parameter collection and the stored procedure. Here you can see stored procedure that I want to execute. It is as simple as that, and this function is going to go ahead and execute this sp execute this sp with that parameter sp with that parameter and return either true or false, and returns either true and false. Okay, so basically if you look at this code, it is very straightforward. We are using the configuration manager class to read the connection string from web.config file, creating the SQL connection object, and create the SQL command object. Now here I have not hard code this. Here I have not hard code this stored procedure name, because I am going to reuse this. Reuse this function to call any kind of stored procedure on this page. That is why it is a generic SP name. Okay. And then the command type stored procedure. Look at this. I am using a for each loop. To loop through each parameter in this list of parameters. Means in this list of parameter. So for each SQL parameter, in SP parameters. So what is SP parameter? So what is SP parameter? The list of parameters that we are passing into this function. And we are adding each parameter to the command object. Open the connection, and look at this. I am using execute scalar. Why I am using execute scalar? Because my stored procedure is going to return a single scalar value, either 1 or 0. Okay, so I am using a execute scalar. And if you look at the return type of execute scalar, it is an object type. As you can see here, it is an object type. If you look at the return type of execute scalar, it is an object type. But this function, which function? But this function returns a boolean, a true or false. So we need to convert that object, means we need to convert that object type, that object type into true or false, and that is what we are doing here by using convert dot boolean, by using convert dot to boolean. So now I am going to use this function in my page load event. Okay, so I'm going to use this function in my page load event. And even before that, let's go ahead and write another function which will basically call this stored procedure, call this stored procedure, which will basically call this stored procedure. We have to write another function. And why we are using this stored procedure? To check if password reset link is a valid or an expired link. Okay, valid or an expired link. So we are using this stored procedure to check if the password reset link is a valid or an expired link. Okay, so I have another function here. Let me go ahead, and again this function is straightforward, means go to the notepad. Here is the coding. Copy this one. Go to the Visual Studio. Paste it here. Again, this function is very straightforward one. Straightforward one. It has hardly got 2 lines of code within that. So all this function does here is it create. So if you look at this function, all it does is it create a collection, a list of SQL parameter, collection. Okay, a list of SQL parameter. So list of SQL parameter list is equal to new list of SQL parameter. So that is a list of SQL parameter, and I am creating a new SQL parameter object. This is this new SQL parameter object. Means this one. This is new SQL parameter object. Since this stored procedure has only one input parameter, since this stored procedure has only one input parameter, here you can see this, I am using just one parameter object. Okay, so the parameter name is GUID, GUID, GUID. So at globally unique identifier, and where is the value coming from for that one. The value will come from the query string. Okay, from here query string value is coming for this parameter. Okay, from this query string value is coming from this query string. Okay, so that is why we are saying request dot query string. Request dot query string. And what is the name of the query string variable? Name of the query string variable is UID. So we are retrieving that UID from the query string. Okay, and what we are doing with that parameter list? What we are doing with this parameter list? Object. This is the object. We are we are actually passing that to the execute SP, to the execute SP here. Okay, here we are actually passing that to this execute SP method, execute SP method. So if you look at the execute SP method, we are actually calling that we are actually calling that here. Okay, we are calling that here. We are calling this execute SP method here. And what SP do I want to execute? And what SP do I want to execute? What stored procedure? SP is password reset link valid. That is the one that I want to execute. So that is the name of the stored procedure. So that is the name of the stored procedure. And that's the list of the parameter. This is the name of the stored procedure, and that is the parameter. That is the list of parameter. Only one parameter, because our stored procedure expecting only one parameter. Because our stored procedure expecting only one parameter. Okay, here. That's it. We are returning whatever this SP, whatever this execute SP, whatever this execute SP returns. What does this execute SP return? A true or false. It returns a true or false. And look at that, this function. And look at that, this function is also returning a true or false. So whatever the function, whatever this function returns, it is going to return that back to the caller. that back to the caller. Means whatever this function returns, it is going to return that back to the caller. Okay, so where am I going to use this function? I'm going to use this function in my page load event. Okay, so let me save that. First of all, I need to save the whatever I have copy pasted in this change password.axpx.cs file. And within page load event, what I am going to do, so when the page first loads up, so go to the notepad, and from here you need to copy and paste this coding and paste it here. So when the page first loads up, look at that. If not is post back. So when the page first loads up, I'm calling this function. So which function is that? Is password reset link valid is the function. So this function is going to return it true or false. So this function is going to return it true or false. So if it return false, then what do I want to do? If is password reset link valid is not valid, then I am showing a message here, label message dot text. Label message dot text is equal to password reset link has expired or is invalid. And before that we are setting the label color to red. Before that we are setting the label color to red, just to indicate that it is an error message. That's it. So pretty simple and straightforward, simple edu.net code. So now let me build this. Now let me build this. Control Shift B. Shortcut to build the application. Now let me go ahead and click on the link. Now if I click on this link, where is the link? Go to the first, need to close it. And if I click on this link, now as soon as the page loads up, look at that. That is a valid link. That is a valid link. So that is a valid link. If you look at this GUID, globally unique identifier, this exists within the database. This exists within the database. Okay, here you can see. In the table, In the table TBL reset password request, see the ID. Okay, this is the same grid which is in the page password change password.axpx. Okay, so same GUID, globally unique identifier, in this table. Okay, so if you look at that TBL password request table, so I have something that is ending in 2ET. But on the other hand, look at that, I will change that maybe to, so here I go to the browser and I change it here. If I change it from E, D to E, and press enter, so it will change that maybe. Look at that, the moment I do that, I change the little bit change there. So I press enter, recent link has expired or is invalid. As you can see, password recent link has expired or is invalid. Okay, so we figured out to check, whether the password reset link is valid or not. Okay, the next step is basically when the user click on the button, when the user click on the button, we need to change the password. Okay, so when the user click this button, save button, you know we need to change the password. Okay, so the next thing that we have to do is to write a stored procedure to actually change the password. Okay, so I have another stored procedure here which actually changes the user password. And look at this stored procedure takes in two input parameters. So which stored procedure are we talking about? We are talking about this sp change password. And this stored procedure takes in two input parameters, the globally unique identifier and and new password that we want to change it to. Okay, so what are we doing here? We are declaring variable. Okay, we are declaring variable holds user ID and from table password request and from TBL reset password request. Look at that. That is the again same code. We are taking this globally unique identifier. We are taking a globally unique identifier from the URL, from the from the URL I mean, whatever is passed into this stored procedure, I mean, whatever passed into this stored procedure, and then we are retrieving. Okay, check TBL reset password request table. Is there a check TBL reset password request table? Is there a row that matches this? The globally unique identifier. If that is the case, retrieve the user ID. If that is the case, retrieve the user ID. Means, is there a row in TBL reset password request that matches this globally unique identifier? If that is the case, retrieve the user ID. Retrieve the user ID from there. And if the user ID is null, and if the user ID is null, then we know that it is an invalid one. So that is why select 0. That is why select 0 as is password change. So which means password is not changed. Else, if the user ID exists, if the user ID exists, if the user ID exists, what do you want to do? We want to update TBL user table. Change the password. So if you look at this, we want to update the TBL user table. Change update this password column. Change this password column. Here you can see in this table, change update this password column. Okay, for which user? For the user ID, for the user ID that you have retrieved from TBL reset password requests. So from TBL, if you go back to the, so from TBL, reset password request, we retrieve this user ID. We retrieve this user ID. Okay, from TBL reset password request table, we retrieve this user ID, and if there is a user ID, then we look up that ID within this table, within this TBL user table, and then we change the password, we update this TBL users table, and that exactly what we are doing here, and that exactly we are doing here. And after we do that, actually deleting we are actually deleting from TBL, from TBL reset password request. this row. We are deleting this row from TBL reset password request table. So if you look at this, so if you look at this, so if you look at this, means delete from TBL reset password request, delete from TBL request password request where ID is equal to at, that whatever the unique identifier, whatever the unique identifier at, whatever the unique, this one, okay, unique identifier. So delete this, so this row gets deleted, so this row gets deleted, so this row gets deleted, which means true, which means true. Now okay, so the next thing we want to do is to actually call the stored procedure from our .NET application. So we want to call this stored procedure from our .NET applications. Okay, this stored procedure. So let's flip to Visual Studio. So let's write another function to actually change the user password. So I have another function, private bool change users. So go to the change password, and here we need to copy and paste. Here is the code. Copy from here and paste back to here. Paste back it to here. So let's copy paste. We have copy pasted it. So I have this function private change password. So if you look at this function, we have a compilation error here. So if you look at this forms authentication, this is form authentication. There is a compilation error. Forms authentication, okay. So this form authentication class, this is present in system.web.security namespace. So let's go ahead and import that. Okay. So system.web. You can see it here. System.web.security namespace. So that should get rid of that compilation error there. And then if you look at this again, it is going to be very straightforward. All this function does change user password. Look at that. This, this function is going to call stored procedure. This function is going to call this stored procedure. Change sp change password. And if you look at this stored procedure, it is expecting two input parameters. So all you have to do is create a parameter list. create a parameter list, create a parameter list object just like the one param parameter list object. Before this function, call this stored procedure. Before this function, call this stored procedure. Call this stored procedure, which is which has only one input parameter, which has only one input parameter. Okay, if you see that it has only one input parameter. Before this function, call this stored procedure. Call this stored procedure. SP is password reset invalid. SP is password invalid, which has only one parameter, as you can see here. But this function, but uh, but this function change, user password is going to call a stored procedure which has got two input parameter, Okay, there are the two input parameter. This is the first input parameter. This is the first input parameter. This is the second input parameter. Okay. So this stored procedure is password reset link valid, has only one input parameter, as you can see here. There is the only one input parameter, while this change password user password has two parameter function. This function has two parameter input parameter. Okay. So the first input parameter is the globally unique identifier, and that's what we are passing in. Where is the value for that coming from the query string, so request dot query string of UID, and then the next parameter is the password itself. So where is the password coming from? Password is coming from? The password comes from either new password or confirm new, either new password or confirm new password, any text box. Okay. But remember, we are encrypting and storing password in the table, so we have to encrypt that. So the password is basically hash, so we need to hash that. If you see the password, it is hashed, so we need to hash that. And how we are doing that? Using hash password for storing in config file method. And how we are doing that? using hash password for storing config file method. So so we are retrieving the value, the password from text boxes, from text box. We are using the SHA1 as the algorithm. We are using the SHA1 as the algorithm and then passing that value as the parameter value. Okay, and finally what we are doing, you are calling the execute sp method. Execute sp method. We are calling the execute sp method. So if you look at the execute sp method is same method. Here you can see that. So if you look at the execute sp method is the same method. It expect the stored procedure name. It expect the stored procedure name, as you can see here. It expects stored procedure name, method, stored procedure name. This execute sp method expect a stored procedure name, list of parameter objects, and that is what you are passing in here. And whatever this function returns, and whatever this function returns, that you are returning back this function return boolean, your function return whatever this function execute sp function returns, what you are returning back. This function returns boolean, your function return boolean. Your function return type is boolean. Your function return type is boolean. This function return boolean. Your function return type is boolean. They match up. They match up means if you look at the execute sp, it is also a boolean type, and here is this function change password has also type boolean type, so they match ups. Okay, very simple and straightforward. Now we will have to call this in button save click. Button save click. Okay, so when the user clicks that save button, so when the user click at that save button, that is when we need to call this function. That is when we need to call this change user password. Means when we click that button, this button, that is when we need to call this function change user password and actually update the user password. And if you look at that, this is again very straightforward. Okay, so all your 2 lines of code there means go to the notepad and you need to copy from here. There's nothing. Here is the button save coding. Go up. Okay, I will have to write it on. So in this button, click event, we write this code. I'm typing it here. If change user's password, label message, dot text, is equal to password change successfully. Else label message for color, set to red, label message dot text is equal to password reset link has expired or is invalid. So hardly 2 lines of code there. So when I click the button there, what we want to do, if change user password, if change user password, so this function is going to return a true or false. This function is going to return a true or false. If the password is changed successfully, otherwise false. So if this function returns true, then the label message for that label, you are setting the text as password change successfully. Password change successfully. Otherwise, you are setting the color to red. Red. And then obviously password reset link has expired. Password reset link has expired or is invalid. So as simple as that. Okay, all right. So so with this, let's build this. Control Shift B. Now let's go back to our email ID and click on this password reset link. So it is a valid link that is present within our system. So it will not showing any error message here. Now let me go ahead and change the password to test1. So test1, I click save. Means I type here test1 and confirm pass test1 and click save. So test1 is my new password now, and I can even log in and look at that. Before that, let's go ahead and check that. So password is changed successfully, and I can even log in and look at it. That before that, let's go ahead and check what happened to the request. The request successfully deleted, means go to the database and execute. So the request successfully deleted from TBL reset password request table. As you can see, there is nothing in this table. Okay, so now if I go ahead and click on this again, look at that, I get an error. Means if I go back to the browser and put the cursor here and press enter, look at that, I get an error. Password reset link has expired or invalid. So if I click on this link and land on this page, now as soon as the page loads up, means if I go and here you will see the same error, because that globally unique identifier does not exist in the table, because that globally unique identifier does not exist in the table. And this point of time, if I try to change the password again and click save, look at that, I get the same error message. Okay, if I again and click password reset link has expired or is invalid. Okay, so in this session we have actually seen how to change user password based on that reset link based on the recent reset link. In the next video, we will discuss about changing password by providing the current password. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.